Randy's Random Rants.
Police started conducting interviews with several people in her neighborhood, her family members, trying to determine if someone wanted her dead.
Winnetta's mother immediately offers up the name of a possible suspect, her daughter's ex-boyfriend and Jalen's father, Richmond Phillips.
Family members began to share information with the investigators about this man. He was a police officer. He worked undercover. In addition to that, he lived not far from Hillcrest Heights Park, right in that same area.
Not only does Richmond live near the scene of the crime, but those close to Winnetta claim that in the 11 months since Jalen's birth, Richmond has made it crystal clear he wants nothing to do with Winnetta or his new baby daughter.
He didn't want anything further to do with her. Didn't contact her anymore. He went on about his business.
Detectives make plans to question Richmond, but before they do, someone else beats them to it.
Winnetta's mom had gone to, Richmond Phillips' house to confront him.
Hello, where's Richmond Phillips? Who are you? You need to go in there and you need to find him.
It was quite a scene. Winnetta's mother, she said, you know what? You have 30 minutes before I come in your house.
As tempers flare, detectives also arrive at the Phillips residence in search of Richmond.
Okay, calm down.
Moments later, the man at the center of this storm pulls up.
What the hell is going on?
Yes.
Her in her
Richmond Phillips?
Yeah?
We need to speak to you a moment.
Investigators order Winnetta's mom to stay on the porch so they can speak with Richmond one-on-one. They inform Richmond that Winnetta and Jalen have seemingly been murdered. The reaction isn't quite what they expected from the man Winnetta's mother fingered as the crime's #1 suspect.
You have any information? You know them, right?
Yes, I do.
He was genuinely concerned and wanted to help find whoever did this to Jalen and to Winnetta.
Have you seen her at all, or have you?
I haven't spoke with him in about a year.
Not only does Richmond seem genuinely distraught by the news of Winnetta and Jalen's deaths, but he also has an alibi for the night police believe the crimes occurred.
He said he hadn't seen her in a year. He stated that he in fact had worked the evening shift that night.
To verify his alibi, investigators reach out to Richmond's superiors with the Metropolitan D.C. Police Department. Richmond is telling the truth.
Richmond Phillips?
Also lending credence to Richmond's innocence is the type of weapon believed to have been used in the attack.
Police officers don't carry the .22 caliber as a service weapon. We also checked Richmond Phillips' gun registry to see if he had owned any weapons, and in fact he did not own a .22 caliber gun.
Outside of the statement made by Winnetta's cousin, none of the physical or circumstantial evidence points to Richmond as the culprit. But with no other credible leads, detectives decide to dig deeper into their fellow officer's background.
I brought his entire squad in to interview each one of them to see if there could be anything relevant to the case that they might know.
As the stories of the veteran cop begin to stream out, detectives learn that Richmond's personal life was more complicated than they initially realized.
Richmond Phillips is married. He lived with his mom, his wife, and his 12-year-old daughter.
Detectives wonder if Richmond's affair with Winnetta and the child he had with her could be a motive for murder.
Naked pictures in his locker. Richmond Phillips was a womanizer.
Police uncover a slew of evidence that suggests any number of women might have wanted Winnetta dead.
Upon speaking with people that he worked with, we found out that he had several women. And he was kind of a womanizer.
In fact, in his locker at work, he had over 20 pictures of women in various naked poses that I guess he kept as souvenirs.
We need to determine their relationships to see if one of them may have been jealous that he had had a child by another woman.
But
The police department with him, he met her there.
hoping this could be the break they need, detectives bring Karen in for questioning.
Thanks for coming in and talking to us. We appreciate it.
No problem, anytime.
Okay. We need to know a little bit more about your relationship with Richmond Phillips.
The investigators talked to her for hours. How close was this woman, the mistress, and Mr. Phillips?
Well, we really didn't have too much of a relationship. It was more just casual sex.
Karen was very cooperative. She told me that she developed a sexual relationship with him and that she would meet him at various hotels just for that reason.
You weren't aware that he was already a married man?
Oh, no, I definitely wasn't aware he was a married man.
So as the investigators continued to plow through evidence, they learned that the very next day after her body was found, Juanetta was supposed to have been in paternity court against Richmond Phillips.
She decided to file for a paternity test to try to get some child support from him.
The paternity suit would have required Phillips to pay support for Jalen. Plus, he would have been ordered to include her on his health care coverage.
When we start connecting the dots, everything is now starting to align back to Mr. Phillips.
But as investigators know, there's only one way to find out for sure.
We needed to speak with Richmond Phillips immediately.
We never did. That shell casing, a needle in a haystack, was found by one of the detectives who happened to look down when there was something shiny on the ground, and that was a wonderful discovery. So the shell casing was recovered, but the gun never was.
Have zeroed in on their prime suspect, married cop Richmond Phillips, who not only had motive and opportunity to kill his mistress and their child, but also means.
Richmond had multiple relationships with various women, and it was determined through one of the females he had contact with, Karen. She had observed him at one point with a weapon on his ankle.
She said that when Richmond would get undressed, she would see a small handgun strapped to his ankle. Exactly the type of weapon that killed Juanetta.
Richmond Phillips really wanted to avoid a paternity suit with Juanetta, didn't want to acknowledge that this was his daughter, and did not want to have to pay her any amount of money.
We're looking for the things that we can test his story against, and you can see his story starting to evolve.
He had said he hadn't seen her and hadn't talked to her, but phone records showed that wasn't the case.
He called her over 100 times the month prior to that paternity test. He tried to reach out to her repeatedly, so his desperation grew as the test came closer. His intention was to convince her not to go forward with this paternity test. The surveillance tape confirmed that Juanetta and Richmond Phillips were in fact in this park together. It confirmed the time that he arrived at the park at about 10:30 at night, and also confirmed the two of them coming together to talk.
They stayed there for approximately 8 hours and sat on the picnic bench and talked.
We assumed he was trying to talk her out of making him take the paternity test.
For 8 hours?
The next day.
But it's what the surveillance captures just before 6 a.m. on May 31st that's arguably the most damning.
The cameras in the park scan the park. They're not fixed cameras. And so we have Richmond Phillips there with her about 4 minutes before her death, and the next time the camera comes around, her body is laying back on a picnic table.
And then as the camera continues to zoom, the next cycle through, the picnic table is empty. There's nobody there.
Wow, that's some
So the
creepy
surveillance
shit.
video, showed not necessarily the crime, but it showed events leading up to it and the events afterward.
What's worse is that just hours after Richmond Phillips was caught on the park surveillance video, he seemed unaffected.
Richmond Phillips continued his day. He then went to the courthouse and attended the paternity hearing, gave his DNA as he was supposed to.
With video evidence in hand, investigators bring Officer Richmond Phillips in for another round of questioning.
In the beginning, Richmond Phillips is cool as a cucumber going through this interview. He's got this charade going perfectly.
I haven't seen. I didn't know if she left, moved, what. I haven't seen her over a year. So no contact this year at all.
Because of that surveillance system video, I now knew that he had in fact lied to me, that he had seen her more recently than a year.
When he was confronted with the fact that, guess what? There's a surveillance tape. Then he starts backpedaling.
Did that happen? Do you remember meeting her there? I met the other day.
Eventually, he started to change his story and say that he had
Tommy
with
boy.
her. So we started picking through inconsistencies.
Tommy
in his statement.
boy's on that ass.
You watch the video, and now that's not possible because he's actually shows that if something in a car drive, something happens to it at the spot. You see where things are pointing to. Some type of confrontation happened between you and her, which ultimately caused that. That's basically what I'm saying. I think anything happens to us, it's time to talk.
After hours of cat and mouse, detectives are done playing games. They charge Richmond Phillips with 2 counts of murder.
Good job.
At that point, he asked for an attorney, and officers from his agency actually came and took his weapon and badge and told him that he was...
Long way to go before justice is served. And the question still remains, would a jury really believe a husband, father, and respected officer like Richmond Phillips was a cold-blooded killer at heart?
The defense...
Why not? Don't you guys... They don't believe that an officer will kill his wife and kid? Don't you guys got like half of the people that you fucking employ in jail for killing their fucking kid or their wife or something? You got this guy that just fucking froze his kid in a garage over here. He was some kind of cop, right? I could name them fucking one after one, hand by hand. In this damn show, you got fucking like a cop that's fucking raping people and killing people on this show every day. But right now on the show, his squadron can't believe, or people can't, the jury can't believe that a cop would do such a thing. That's what they do. Them niggas go through that test, they get that gun and that badge, and the first thing that's on their mind is how I am going to womanize somebody. How am I gonna exercise my sociopath womanizing mentality, my Einstein, with this gun and badge that I got? And then you want to go run around, get everybody pregnant, pull people over. You want to give all the niggas tickets so that they go to court and lose their fucking car and shit. This motherfucker got a damn career with a gun and a badge. He wants to run around sticking his cock in everybody. A police officer. A police officer. And get a bitch pregnant and then kill her. Not only does this nigga kill the chick that he was fucking, he lets the fucking baby that she had of his die in a car from heat exhaustion. Oh boy.
On January 14th, 2013, more than a year after the deaths of Winnetta Wright and her infant daughter Jalen, former police officer Richmond Phillips is led into a Maryland court.
How they got a motherfucker like that on the police force?
A shocker.
He don't even look like a cop. He looks like a criminal.
Who was sworn to serve and protect his community, kill
Yo,
not only...
that motherfucker looks like a damn criminal, bro.
When it became clear that Winnetta had no intention of dropping her claim, Richmond drew his .22 caliber pistol and pulled the trigger in the early morning hours of May 31st.
He shoots Winnetta in the head, takes her body into the woods, takes Winnetta's car with Jalen strapped in the car seat out, drives it around the corner, and he puts it in an apartment complex in a visitor parking spot. And so he left her there in the broad daylight to just cook, then walks home.
That is so sad. That baby had to have been crying for one reason or the other. He had to have...
And leave him in a parking lot with the windows rolled up. It just shows that he had no regard for the child's life.
Wow.
As for Richmond's appearance in paternity court later that day, prosecutors claimed that too was part of his plan.
He showed up for court the next day because he knew the child and Winnetta.
He said the next day.
Mr. Richmond figured that this was a creative way to avoid paying child support.
He wanted to hide the fact from his
Yeah, he looks real creative.
Child that
all them dreads and shit, he looks real creative.
Another child.
It's too bad he gotta cut them fucking dreads off, man, so them niggas can't fucking run their fingers through his fucking hair in jail.
See Winnetta alive. She's sitting on the table. Richmond Phillips is standing over her right shoulder. and that's the last way we see her. About 2 minutes later, her feet have fallen off the chair, and she is just laid back. Her feet
Wow,
are
what a
over the
fucking
side of
dick
the
face.
The surveillance video is damning evidence, as are the witnesses
Wow.
prosecutors called to the stand.
We had about 25 witnesses testify. His mistress came in and identified the handgun. It matched to the bullet in the place where the bullet belonged. The DNA with the blood underneath.
I hope they are in there giving that nigga Mandingo right now, bro.
Counter, Richmond's defense team claims that rather than proving their client's guilt, the surveillance video does just the opposite.
They said just because the video showed him with her seconds before.
Yeah, they're gonna do that for the cops. They're gonna do that for their people.
Necessarily in and of itself mean
whether they're white or black.
Maybe there was somebody else in the park that day.
Furthermore, there's the
A Ku Klux Klan man with a fucking hood, a white hood on and a white sheet, right?
Never found her in the course of investigation.
The defense also claims that their client simply wasn't capable of violence on this scale. His job was to protect and serve, not to murder and deceive.
People have great
Okay.
respect in the most.
Now, if I'm the judge
and
you have people that are sitting there vouching for him, co-signing him, and advocating for him and shit, oh yeah, he wouldn't do that, he wouldn't do this.
2013, both sides rest their cases. After 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returns with its verdict.
Your heart's in your throat before any verdict is read. So this was a nervous moment, waiting for justice to be done for this baby and for this young mother.
When the judge instructed me to read the verdict, I turned to Mr. Phillips, and I never faced evil like that in my life.
He locked eyes with him to read guilty. It was a very powerful moment in the courtroom, very powerful. Richmond Phillips was sentenced to double life.
Look at him though. He looks like a fucking criminal. I know people are like, well, what does a criminal look like? Him, motherfucker.
Although justice was ultimately served in this case, it can't replace
fuck
the
is you
2
talking
young
about?
lives that were taken
Look at
that
him.
fateful day in 2011. The life of an innocent child, and the life of a woman who dreamed of becoming a police officer, only to fall in love with and then fall victim to a killer cop masquerading as one of the good guys.
I think that she could not conceive of someone who appeared to be so responsible, so confident, so sophisticated, could turn out to be the monster that he did.
Yeah.